The Boston Bruins win 5-1 over the Vancouver Canucks in the closest game they've had maybe this year to a full 60-minute effort. Brad Marchand silences the boos from Vancouver fans early in the game. Pastrnak almost gets on every single goal, and the Boston Bruins claim Oliver Wahlstrom off waivers from the New York Islanders. As always, I will cover the highs and lows from the Boston Bruins 5-1 win over the Vancouver Canucks. For the first time in what feels like a long time, I have more positive than negative to say about this one. So buckle up, Bruins fans. I'm here to give you the latest info on your beloved Boston Bruins. If you've been liking my Bruins content, please leave me a like and subscribe. If you've already done so, thank you, and let's get into it. Before the game, the Boston Bruins claimed Oliver Wahlstrom from the New York Islanders on waivers. I will go into depth on the addition at the end of the video because I wanted to start off by talking about the game from last night. Before the game, I saw many comments of fans thinking this one was an automatic loss before the puck had even dropped. Yes, the Vancouver Canucks had come into Boston and Jake DeBrusk beat his former team previously. Yes, the Bruins had played two absolute stinkers back-to-back on the road. This is all true, but two things going into this game that wasn't talked about enough. Thatcher Demko was only playing in his second game of the year after recovering from an injury, and Vancouver Canucks have struggled at home this season. The Canucks, going into last night's matchup, were 5-6-4 at home. The Canucks had also only won 2 games in their last 5 and had hit a bit of a rough patch on their season, and the flu bug is going around the room in Vancouver. Heck, if I'd done my research more before the game, I might have put some money on the Bruins because all signs pointed to a possible Bruins win here. This season, we have seen a lot of former Bruins get a win by playing the Bruins this season. But then again, we've seen a lot of teams get the win against the Bruins this season too. Sacco went with Jeremy Swayman in net with hopes he could redeem himself after one of the worst performances of his career and put Mason Lohrei back in the lineup with hopes to use his speed on breakouts against the fast Vancouver Canucks. McLaughlin slotted back in on the forward group, and Johnson, who had struggled as of late, took a seat in the press box. I haven't been too impressed with McLaughlin either, but it's obvious the Bruins front office isn't too confident in either player as they claim Wahlstrom, and Sacco has already hinted that he would be slotted on the Bruins' third line when he has a chance to come into the lineup. The Bruins needed to have a good effort last night, and they got it. The puck drops, and the biggest piece of good news is the Bruins played the first minute of the game and didn't get a penalty. It was a Festivus miracle. The Bruins come roaring out the gate and played with pace, and were first on the puck and using their legs. They didn't resemble the team fans had seen in the past 2 games and looked to be setting themselves up for a good game. It was Vancouver who would take the first penalty of the game when Tyler Miles gets called for a cross-check at 4:12 of the first period. During this power play, the boos started to rain down on Brad Marchand from the Vancouver fans every time he touched the puck, which I kind of appreciate, and I'm sure Marchand did as well. Not only does it show the Vancouver fans are passionate, but it gets the players in the game as well and motivates them. A guy like Marchand feeds off things like this, and tonight was no different. I was at a game in Toronto once where they booed him, and he ended up getting 2 goals. The Bruins, who have the worst power play in the league, passed the puck around the perimeter and controlled the play. And Elias Lindholm was able to spot none other than Brad Marchand at the side of the net, who roofs one on Demko, and it's 1-0 Boston. After the goal, Marchand puts his glove up to his ear to show the fans in Vancouver he could hear them before he noticed all he could hear was silence now. It set the tone for the rest of the game, I felt, because their captain showed he was here to play. In the past couple games, it was the Bruins that gave up the early goal and had their legs taken out from underneath them, and it was nice to see the opposite this game. Directly after the Marchand goal, the Bruins looked to apply even more pressure and didn't give Vancouver any room in the neutral zone and hem them in their own zone. Minutes later, David Pastrnak spots Morgan Geekie in front of the net and taps in his 5th of the year, and it's 2-0 Bruins. Vancouver would even get another penalty before the end of the first, but the Bruins failed to capitalize, and the period ends and it's 2-0 Boston. Before the game, Sacco moved Pastrnak back to his former line with Zacha and Geekie, and it looked to have paid off. David Pastrnak looked to have played his best period of hockey as he skated with pace, was jumping into the play, and was passing with purpose. The second period was a lot like the first, as the Bruins didn't look to give the Canucks any room at the start. Vancouver was only able to register 3 shots in the first period. Swayman wasn't tested at all, but also didn't look rusty, which was nice to see. Sometimes when a goalie barely sees the puck, it can cause them to make mistakes later in the game, but Swayman was up for the task in the second. In fact, for about 10 minutes into the second, the Canucks get 7 shots on net, and Swayman made some nice saves to keep the Bruins in the game and not give the Canucks any momentum. The first 10 minutes of the second was a back and forth battle as both teams had their chances and neither wanted to give up any ice at the neutral zone. It was the Bruins who would strike first in the second period though, as David Pastrnak makes a nice behind the back pass to spot Pavel Zacha all alone in the middle of the ice. Zacha walks into the Vancouver zone with little resistance and is able to make a nice move on Demko to put the Bruins up 3-0. That was David Pastrnak's 400th assist of his career, and for a guy who is known for scoring goals, he hit the 400 assist milestone before he hit 400 goal milestone. Pastrnak currently sits at 359 career goals. David Pastrnak doesn't get enough credit for his vision on the ice sometimes by NHL and Bruins fans. This season, he's shown how good his vision is, as he leads the Bruins with 21 assists. I would almost wager Pastrnak getting to play with Bergeron and Marchand early in his career helped shape him into a more complete offensive player. 11 minutes and 49 seconds into the period, Mark Laughlin shows why putting pucks on the net and good things happen is a saying. He shoots a seeing eye shot from outside the circle and hits off a Canuck defender, and it goes in the back of the net. And it's 4-0 Boston in the second period. So many times this season, it's been Boston that has been down by such a big margin. So it was nice to see Boston up by that much. They look comfortable on the ice, and the good news is they didn't take their foot off the gas. The Bruins continue to be first on pucks, finishing their checks and getting in the front of the Canucks shots with their body. One thing the Bruins did in the second was get a little sloppy with their puck management though, and had 8 giveaways in the second period alone. But thankfully, the Canucks were unable to capitalize on any of them. The second is the reason I said at the start of the video that the Bruins almost played a full 60 minutes, because they had a couple brain farts in the second and one big one in the third we'll get to later. 26 seconds into the third period, David Pastrnak decides to keep going, kept the puck to himself, and notices Denko overcommit. Brings the puck behind the net, wraps it around for his first goal of the game. It was his 4th point of the game, and goes back to me saying Pastrnak played one of his best games of the year offensively. He almost led the Bruins forwards in ice time after the game with 19 minutes and 11 seconds. Pavel Zacha beat him by 1 second, who had 19 minutes and 12 seconds. Sacco mentioned after the game because the fourth line didn't get as much ice time as they usually do because his top guys were playing so well, he wanted to reward them with more ice time. Pastrnak was seeing looks on almost every line last night in Vancouver, which I'm sure was making it harder for Vancouver with regards to matchups. Unfortunately, Jeremy Swayman's shutout bid gets spoiled when Brad Marchand makes a loose pass to Elias Lindholm, who can't corral it in his own end, giving it right back to Vancouver, who walk in now. Brandon Carlo is faced with a 3-on-1 situation, and the puck ends up in the back of the net. Swayman lets one leak through the 5-hole, and I would think he would like to have that one back. In a situation like that, both Swayman and Carlo kind of have to commit to what they think is going to happen. And it looked to me like Swayman thought Miller was going to shoot it, but he elects to pass, which causes Swayman to give up the 5-hole, and we have a 5-1 hockey game. Swayman didn't have to be perfect on the night, but there was some pushback from the Canucks in the second. He had to hold them back. Elias Lindholm, who many, including myself, thought might miss some time, played and looked effective, winning 61% of his faceoffs. Won some pretty key defensive zone faceoffs on the night. Unfortunately, his strong defensive play and passing on the night got overshadowed by the giveaway that led to the goal by Vancouver. The Bruins were able to hold off a last-minute surge from the Vancouver and win the game 5-1 in a game I felt like that had a lot more meaning than most. They had been embarrassed the past 2 games and needed a victory, and a large one at that. Team stats don't really improve and still have the league's worst power play in the league, but has been scoring more often as of late, so it looks to be improving. They changed their record to 16, 13, and 3 and still hold 3rd in the Atlantic, but have games in hand over Tampa, who is only 4th by 1 point behind them. What the Bruins need to do is go into Calgary for the next game and start a winning streak. I hope Sacco gives Korpisalo the next start to give him a redemption game like he gave Swayman last night. One thing I do know about the Boston Bruins is they plan out all starts at the beginning of each month and rarely deviate from the plan, regardless of how a goalie played in the previous game. Their next game is Tuesday against Calgary, so they have a couple days off on the road to regroup and get back at it. I want to hear from you, though, on your thoughts on the 5-1 win over the Vancouver Canucks. The last thing I want to discuss was the Bruins made a waiver claim on Oliver Wahlstrom. Many of you might remember Oliver Wahlstrom as the kid from Maine who scored the fancy goal at the Garden in minor hockey with his stick off the ice the whole time, and the internet would not let anyone forget after the claim was announced. The press release reads, Boston Bruins general manager announced today, December 14th, that the team has claimed forward Oliver Wahlstrom off waivers from the New York Islanders. Wahlstrom, 24, has appeared in 27 games with the New York Islanders during the 2024-25 season, recording 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points. The 6'2", 205-pound forward has appeared in 220 career NHL games, all with New York, totaling 36 goals and 35 assists for 71 points. The Portland, Maine native was originally selected by the Islanders in the first round, 11th overall in the 2018 NHL entry draft. I'm not going to pretend I know much about Wahlstrom besides the fancy goal, but from what Joe Sacco said to the media, he can score some goals.
Yeah, we made a claim on him today. I was just notified before we went on the ice, and as far as specifics when he'll join, it's still up in the air. That hasn't been determined yet. I don't know that answer, but just from knowing the player a bit, watching him the last few years, we've had a lot of games against the Islanders, and there's been games where he's been in and out for them, but The one thing that sticks to my mind is a good shot, a guy that can probably score some goals, and pretty good on the elbow or the bumper in the power play because of that shot that he has, right-handed shot.
Sacco also would go on to say that Wahlstrom most likely will be on the third line with Coyle and often talked about in trade chatter, Trent Frederick. Wahlstrom has been in and out of the lineup for the past 3 seasons and plagued by injury problems over his career. He fell out of favor earlier this season with head coach Patrick Waugh, but was still able to get 2 goals and 2 assists in 27 games on one of the most boring teams to watch offensively in the league. I'm not going to come out and say he'll be the savior or he's just what the Bruins need. He's young and only makes $1 million on the season and plays the right side. He has an aptitude for scoring goals, but he hasn't translated that to the NHL game except in 2020-21, he scored 12 goals and 9 assists in 44 games for the Islanders. He's from Maine, and as you know, the Bruins love their local boys. I read this signing as it just doesn't hurt them. This puts the Bruins tighter up to the cap, and now they only have $185,000 in cap space. They could send McLaughlin down to Providence, but I wouldn't be surprised if they even moved Johnson down to Providence because the odds of him being claimed on waivers is pretty slim. Sacco doesn't seem to be a big fan of Johnson's game as of late, and he doesn't look like the player we saw in the preseason. Not too sure when we'll see him in the lineup, and knowing the Bruins, they would like to get him in a couple practices before they see some game action. I would think most likely we would see him for his first time against Edmonton on Thursday to close out the road trip. Best case, he works out and provides the third line and second PP some offense. Worst case, he doesn't. You send him down to Providence with hopes he gets claimed on waivers. If you know a lot about Wahlstrom, let me know in the comments down below because I would love to know more about the kid. That's a wrap on today's video. To stay up to date on all the news surrounding the Boston Bruins, please subscribe and drop me a like. If news breaks surrounding the Boston Bruins, be sure to check out the channel. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you, and I'll see you next time.